Now I need some way of being able to edit this to-do, and so I'm going to create another route where we can edit the to-do. And so let's call this to-dos, and we'll use the same ID for the to-do, and then we'll have an edit part after that. And the name for this route will be to-dos edit, and we'll use the same controller that we used before. So this way we can just put a different action method on it. I'll call it edit. And again, this will run only on the client. So we have our edit route now, and now we need to go over to the to-dos controller and add that action function. And what we'll do here is we'll render out the same template, but we're going to use a state variable, a reactive state variable, to say that we're in edit mode. And that way we can use the same template and just choose whether or not to render the form, depending upon whether this state is set. Now you can use session for this if you'd like, or you can say this.state.set, and we'll just say is editing is true. So this will be a reactive state object. It uses the reactive dictionary under the hood, and then we can reference this in our templates very easily. Okay, let's head over now to the details template, and we're going to make this a little bit more complex. To save some time, I've pasted in some HTML. Let me walk you through it. Up top I have an if statement, and I'm going to check whether or not we're in the editing state. And the way I can do that is by using this get method. That's going to grab the value of the isEditing state variable that we set earlier in the controller. So if we're in editing mode, then we'll render out this form here, which is what we'll see in a second over on the right. And that'll just show us a text box and text area for editing the to-do. And then we have a link that takes us back to the details page here. If we're not in editing mode, then go ahead and show the subject and description. And if the to-do belongs to me, then we'll show an edit link. The JavaScript down below has the isMyToDo helper, and you can see it just checks whether or not the document's user ID is equal to the currently logged in user ID. So if we click this edit link, we'll change into the edit route. Notice the URL changed, and we're using the same template, except we're using a state variable to decide whether or not to show the form or the regular subject and description. So now I can edit this to do and also add a description, but we need to wire up the save handler. Cancel's already wired up, but we need to wire up the save handler. So let's go down into the JavaScript and add a event handler for the form submit. So we'll say on form submit. And again, the first thing we want to do is to prevent the default behavior so we don't submit the form. And just to make sure this is working, I like to just console log the event. And that way we can test this out quickly before we get too far. Okay, so it looks like the event handler is not working. And normally that's because I've done something like reversed the selector here. So instead I should be saying submit form. The event handler event goes first and then the selector goes second. There we go. So we have our jQuery event in the console, and we know this works, so we can go ahead and continue. So what we'll do, just like last time, is grab the two values. So we'll get the subject from the input. So we'll find the input where the name is equal to the subject, and we'll grab its value. And we'll do the same thing for the description. And then we'll submit those to the database. And so let's just grab the ID of the current context, and we'll say to-dos update where the ID is equal to the ID. And then we'll use the set modifier like before. And we'll set the subject equal to the subject and the description equal to the description. And when we're done with this, we want to route back to the details page. And so to do that, I can say router.go and then just name the route. So In this case, we'll say to-dos detail, and we need to provide an object so that the URL gets the right ID. So we can either pass the data context like this that we have here, or we can pass a specific object that has the parameter that we're looking for. So just to make it explicit, I'm going to do it like this. Now let's go over and make sure this works. So I'm going to say test description, and then we'll click the save button. And it looks like we're saving correctly. But just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and do a query on the to-dos collection. So we'll say find fetch and double check that the data actually got updated properly. It looks like it did. So we have a description, and the subject has been updated. I'm going to add one last thing here, which is we're going to add an updated at timestamp so that we know when it was last updated. Okay, great. So now we have both a details view with this URL, and when we click edit, we are reusing the same template but going to this new URL with an edit link. And we can click save or cancel to get back to the previous state.